Okay, so I'm going to do a presentation on GNU Screen. This is a brief introduction to GNU Screen. We're really just scratching the surface of everything that can be done with it. But this should give you a good introduction. My name is Bob Murphy. Well, let me go through the slide here. I'm a systems administrator from New Jersey. Right now I'm working on primarily Red Hat systems. Unfortunately, my terminal is a Windows machine running PuTTY, but I administer Linux systems about 95% of my day. I've been a desktop Linux user, it says about 20 years, a little more actually these days. I started with Slackware back in about 96 or 97, back in the old, program your mode line yourself, don't screw up or your monitor blows up days. That was no fun at all. So in this presentation, there will be no cat pictures, no memes. The entire demonstration is done in text because it's a screen presentation and that seemed only appropriate for this. So, GNU Screen. Was that enough introduction to me, by the way? Or did you want a little more? Okay. I don't like talking about me that much. So GNU Screen is what's called a terminal multiplexer. If that's not terribly readable in here, very little, there's almost nothing in that lighter color. Everything's mostly white, so it should be easier to pick up. It's a terminal multiplexer, so if you think about it, it's like as if it was kind of a window manager for a terminal session, so either an SSH or a hard terminal session. Despite the fact that it sounds horribly complicated, it's really useful. It's part of the GNU project, so no matter what flavor of Linux you happen to be running, it's almost certainly in there, and that would include the BSDs, and I believe it's available on the Mac too. Windows, I guess, being the notable exception to that. I don't know if they've ported that as part of WSL, but I don't know how useful it'll be in that environment. So, the first thing, and I'm going to get to installing it in a few minutes, but let me show you the killer feature of Screen. This is the feature of Screen that when I found out about it, just said, I need to be using this all the time. This is a super useful feature. So what you can do is start Screen, and you can do Screen-S and a name, so that way it's easier to pick it out if you're trying to run multiples of them, or you can do what I do is never do that and try to guess by the PID. That's my method for this. So let me, I need to start my VM. Bear with me for just a minute. This takes a minute to start up. So we will do, okay. Oh, it's up and running already. Good. So we're SSH'd into just happens to be a Red Hat 7 system. We're going to do Screen-S. Okay, and you saw nothing much happened. It looks, let me make that a little bigger. Let me enlarge the text a little bit.
Do you want to put this into context between the difference between GNU Screen and a bash terminal?
Sure, your bash terminals, oops, I just closed the wrong one. A second bash terminal starts up within Screen. I'm getting there in just a second.
Okay.
So what you're looking at is, you saw me run Screen and then it just boop, dropped back to a bash shell and you're saying, what happened? Screen is actually running in the background right now. It's actually what's providing this bash shell. So, say we start a process. Let me get back to where I was going with this. We'll start a process, and this is nothing, that you couldn't run again, and it runs in real time, but it just shows us that it's running. Now, let me get back to my slides so I don't lose track of it here. So we've started Screen. We've run an application we want to use. What happens normally if you're in SSH and you lose your connection? Your network cuts out, your machine resets. What normally happens?
Relog in.
Yeah, you lose.
Relog in, and your session is still hung at the server end often.
Okay, but generally, and it's hung, but it's useless.
Yeah, exactly. You can't go back in.
You have to
standard
go
in, standard out, close.
Yeah, you have to restart your
Wow.
processes. Everything is done because it ends with that SSH session, with the bash session attached to SSH. It goes away. So we're SSH'd into a server. What happens if I hit the X? Normally, you're done. You're logged out. Everything goes away. But let's log back in. Make this big. I keep hitting that instead of what I actually need, which is, let's make this bigger. Okay, so now we'll SSH back in. Still nothing interesting has happened. We still don't have what we were working on. But if we do screen-r, and let me show you. So if we lose our connection, so I forcibly disconnected that and just dropped the SSH session. Normally you would lose all your stuff. Now what we can do is we can reattach to that screen session, which has been running in the background, running that same task that we had started when we left off. So we'll do a screen-r, and you can see our top session is still running just like nothing ever happened. So that session was actually running in the background. We detached from the SSH session, but screen was still there in between, letting our process continue to run. So if you were doing a backup or you were doing something more substantial than this, it wouldn't have ended.
So screen's like a user proxy, essentially.
Kind of, sort of, yeah.
You're a bash proxy, basically.
Yeah, and it'll do lots of other stuff too. So it's really handy insofar. And when I saw this, I said, I need this all the time, because we had users in our system. You know, some of our applications guys would say, oh, well, and it was actually a Windows problem that precipitated this, because what they would do is they wanted to keep a persistent session, so they would RDP into a Windows machine, putty from there, so that way they could shut down their laptop, go home, log back into the RDP session, and have their things there. So they would start some long-running process in SAP. We'd say, okay, we've got a security issue. We need to reboot this Windows server. What time today can we do this? And they'd say Thursday. Or, no, that's not acceptable. We can't wait 4 days before we reboot this thing. But they say, no, we already kicked off this process. It's already running. I introduced them to Screen. Actually, that was the genesis of this presentation. Was I wanted to show them how to use Screen effectively so that they could start their processes and run them, and they don't have to stay attached to that thing. And they still RDP into their Windows machine, but at least if we need to reboot it, they now use Screen. We can shut down those SSH processes, and they can log back into them, either from their laptops or after the machine comes back up. So that was if I was selling this would be the selling point for me. This is the most important feature in this, as far as I'm concerned, is the fact that it'll allow you to run even detached from your SSH session. So does that tell you what it does above a bash? That's the killer feature, at least for me. Am I bumping the table and moving the camera on you?
The camera is moving.
Oh, okay.
So hello, I'm just saying hi, picking up some stuff.
Hey, we had water squirting out near the toilet in the men's room, and there's towels on the floor. I don't know if that was a known issue or...
Yes, so the men's room is out of commission, so you use
Okay.
the other one.
Okay.
Sorry.
So,
Okay. So for me, this was the killer feature of Screen. But we'll continue on. There's other stuff. Okay. So Screen-R, I just demonstrated this. So we forcibly detached from our SSH session, log back in. SSH is just working the way SSH does. When you do a Screen-R, it reattaches to your session. Now you could specify the name. If you had several Screen sessions running on that one server, you could specify which one you want to attach to. There was only one, so it made life simple. But if we do a Screen-list, we can see there's a screen on, see the PID is 8807, it has a name of KeyLUG. I always forget to do this, and I just have to guess based on which PID looks older than the rest, but that works well enough. Any questions so far? No? Okay. So how do you install Screen? So if you're on a Linux machine now, if you're on a Fedora system, an older Fedora system, or a Red Hat 7 or older system, it's yum install Screen. On Fedora and newer Red Hat, it is DNF install Screen. So they still have an alias back to yum?
So they do, and it's interesting because you can use yum install and everything works like as expected, but I think it's translating to DNF.
It's
now
translating to
on
DNF.
Relay.
Yeah. Well, that's the way it's been going on Fedora for a while. I don't know. No one asked. I'm running Fedora as my host operating system for these, and I'm running.
And then for containers, if you're doing universal base images to build your containers, that's a redistributable
Okay.
limited subset of rel that you can use as a base layer.
Okay.
They have something for the minimal profile. They have something called micro DNF.
Okay.
So micro DNF is smaller and it still can pull some packages and things. It's just,
Gotcha.
so it's, yeah.
So on Debian, Ubuntu, and Mint, or any of the Debian, spawn of Debian, sudo apt-get install screen, or if you're new these days, you can do sudo apt install screen. On FreeBSD, and some FreeBSD person told me there was an easier way to do this, but this is what I found, and it worked. I installed FreeBSD just to do this. So you can cd user port sysutil screen and make install clean, and it installs screen on that as well.
So they just, do they still have port? Like you used to be able to do port install blah.
Maybe that's what
And
they
if it
told
was,
me.
and if it was a pre-built package, it would grab it. If not, it would build it. And then
Not being a regular FreeBSD user, I found this and it works just fine.
20 years ago, I had to use FreeBSD till we moved to.
Oh, I'm fine with FreeBSD, but I just don't have a use case for it right now. And then Slackware and SUSE both had it in their default install. I did an install of both of them to test it. So I didn't try OS 10. I presume it's either available as part of the regular package, or
Mac
you could
ports or
probably
something.
Mac ports or
Brew's what I use.
one of those, or Brew, one of
Yeah,
those.
Brew.
I haven't used OS 10 in quite a while.
I can check. So screen,
Yeah,
it's there.
Oh, he's on a Mac here, so.
just as part of the default install.
User bin screen, yep, it's there.
Yeah,
Cool.
so if you're SSHing into your OS 10 box, you can use this
This
same
version
stuff.
report, it's screen version 400.03.
I don't remember which is current enough. I know the one that's included in Red Hat 6 doesn't allow you to do vertical splits. The one in 7 does.
The screen in OS 10 is 23 October 2006. I'm going to say it's a little bit old.
Might not be as old as the one in Red Hat 6. So, how do we control screens? So, as you noted, when we looked at this, it just dropped and it looks like you're in a bash prompt, because indeed you are. But there's an override that you can get into to tell screen that you have a command for it, and you do Control A and then the command. I'm going to do question mark, which gives us a command summary. It's just an easy demonstration of this. So Control A and then the action you want to take. So Control A is the main modifier, and you do Control A and then the command. So if you're an Emacs user and you're going, oh my God, why are you overriding Control A? It's very easy to reprogram that key to whatever's convenient for you in the config file. Not being an Emacs user, I've never had to do that. So there's a lot of stuff in here. I'm only going to cover a tiny fraction of what's here. But it is handy to have this reference if you need it. So let me do return to end. So you can create more than one window. So now we're getting into the terminal multiplexer part of this. So if we do Control A, C, what we've done is we've created another screen window. So now this one's in front. Oh, look at this, I already have some things. Let's do, just to clean that up, because we're going to do stuff with that later. So we have this screen. So if I do Control A apostrophe, it's going to ask me which window to switch to. So the first one, as numbered correctly, is 0. This one is 1. So if we go to switch to window 0, we're going to go back to our previous window that had the remains of a top session there. And there's window 0. So now we have 2 windows we can switch between. And they're both independent bash sessions. So you might be thinking, well, I've had people say, why don't you just use Terminator and open other things? And I said, well, I happen to be on a Windows machine with PuTTY, and it's not convenient to open a whole bunch of PuTTY sessions to do more than one thing. Or there have been times that I'm either using the VMware console or a hardware console on an actual machine, and this program is extremely
There's your
useful
use case, separate terminal sessions over the same SSH.
Yeah, absolutely.
login.
Yes, if you only want to do one
That's
SSH
that's one
login.
place where this earns its keep.
Yeah. That's a useful feature in and of itself. Like I say, if you're at a hardware terminal and you only have one TTY available, it's really handy to be able to switch between a few, like a VMware console being one that we...
Yeah.
And one of the features I'm going to show you, on a VMware console, you can't copy and paste very easily, and this gives you a replacement for that. Wait till I show you. Okay. So, you can switch between your sessions by number. You can also switch between them in sequence. So let me go
That
back.
not copying and pasting in a terminal session in a VM is very frustrating.
I'm going to show you something that's going to make your life a whole lot easier then. So let's create another one. I'm going to do AC, and I'm going to do my favorite file manager, Midnight Commander, just so we have a distinction between the screens. Because doing next and previous with only 2 screens is hardly any fun at all.
You're
So now
still
we have
dealing
3.
with text transfer, so therefore Midnight Commander is going to give you that
Yes.
look. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this comes through the, Microsoft bought somebody that was putting this together, right?
No.
Or is this a Linux?
This is a GNU project,
Oh,
so
GNU thing, okay.
until Stallman gets bought out, wouldn't expect that to happen anytime soon. So now we've got 3 sessions. We've got the first one we had, which has the remains of top. We have one with an LS, and we have this one. So if I do Control A N, it brings me to the next session, and it wraps around the top. It goes from the last one to the first one. So I do Control A N, and I get step through all of my sessions.
And this is through a single SSH, you can have then multiple.
Yes, I am on a single SSH session
with,
right
with
now.
multiple sessions.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so if you only have one connection in, this is really helpful.
And you could leapfrog to other places and have separate SSH connections from whatever Linux machine you're connecting to,
Yeah. Yes, you can make this
and you
very
screen for that.
you can make this very confusing very quickly if you
Yeah.
choose to. That is certainly an option for you.
I mean, typically with like our Amazon use cases, you have a Bastion server that has one public accessible address, but then the rest of your Amazon machines may not be publicly visible.
Right.
But you
Right.
gotta jump
Yeah.
to the Bastion first and then leap to the other ones.
Yeah, and then you can start a bunch of screen sessions so you can flip between them a little
Right.
more
So
quickly.
screen would run on the Bastion, and then that's letting you jump around to all the others.
You could absolutely do that.
And if
yeah.
all you have is an SSH session with terminal access, then you could do that with this.
Yep, absolutely. So, detached screen. Now, if you're gonna shut down your laptop and go home, you could just drop your SSH session. But as you had mentioned, sometimes like it doesn't know it's been left behind. So the better way to do this is to do Control AD, detach your screen session. That way it makes screen knows for sure that it's been dropped. And it keeps it in the background. It makes it less confusing. So if we do screen-D, see now we're back, remote detached from 8807 KeyLUG, but it's still running in the background.
Now you're going to show us how to reattach to
Right.
it.
Well, we've already done this once. I did a forceful detach by just closing the terminal session. But now, yes, I see a question coming.
The use case we're building up to, though, is to be able to completely log out of your SSH session
Yeah.
and then establish a new SSH session and then get back to that particular
Yeah,
screen.
watch.
From
We'll do-
your new SSH
We'll do a
session.
screen-D.
Okay.
Okay, so I detached. I'll close our terminal.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. It's gone. Close your laptop, go home. When you come back, what we'll do is
Can you maximize that, your
Yeah.
window there?
but because of known terminal,
Oh, yeah, you can't
Inconvenient.
just double-click the menu bar? Or
I don't know, but it's big enough now. So, we'll SSH back in because we've been kicked out completely.
Right.
Okay, we'll do our screen-R. Pick up right where we left off. We'll do a Control AN. So Midnight Commander's been running all this time in the background. Everything's floating around back there, running as if you never left.
So you have to log back in with the same user
Yes, you do.
ID that you left it with.
Yes.
That's how it knows to serve that back to you.
Yes.
When you connect back.
Yes, by default it is set only to serve it back to the person that started it. They're just, and this is a little aside from the presentation, there's a way you can set the permissions so that you can share your session with other people. And indeed, I've done stuff with the person I work with where you log in as root, start the screen session, and he can attach, because he can log SU to root. And then you can both attach to the same screen session so you can watch each other work. Or pardon me, or co-work, and you could both work in that same session. But the security implications of loosening this up for yourself are let's see, it's probably a bad idea most of the time. There's probably a select set of use cases where that might be useful. Where I work, that would be an instant, absolutely, you may not do this ever, so I haven't experimented with it. But you can set it up so that different people can share sessions, because that could be useful if you're trying to walk somebody through something to be able to look in on their session. But that would have to be everybody's consenting in this operation for that to be legit. Because then they could jump in on any of your screen sessions, I think. Again, I haven't delved into it because as soon as I saw the security implications of it, okay, that's no go.
So why do you think they chucked this for TMUX? What's the distinction between the two? Or
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to sidetrack. So, and I didn't mention up front. Please interrupt me with questions. This presentation goes way too fast. I was raised by New Yorkers, so I speak too quickly. I can go through this whole thing really fast, so I welcome questions midway. Usually, the question is, "How come you're using Screen? TMUX is better. Why don't you use TMUX?" That's usually the question.
I'm not like biased. I just want to know
you've asked much more politely than I usually get asked. I have nothing against TMUX. TMUX is a little bit newer. It has some features that Screen does not. And it's a perfectly good program, so I always tell that person, by all means, use TMUX. All of the things I'm doing here,
so
you can
essentially
do with TMUX.
So the same use cases are covered.
Yeah, the same use case. There are a few edge cases where they don't overlap, so you might have to do Screen, like if you're doing like serial interfaces to things, like Screen has all kinds of rich functionality for that I've never used.
To go on like an RS-232 or something?
Yeah, there's all kinds of cool stuff you can do with that. And a few other things that their skill sets don't entirely overlap, but it seems like the vast majority of everything you can do in this, you can do in TMUX with slightly different keystrokes. And in fact, you could probably alias each other's command key back and forth, and then you'd probably hardly know the difference between them. But I haven't really messed with it. Since Red Hat 8 has eliminated Screen from the default repositories, I guess I'm going to have to retool this for TMUX.
Unless it's in Apple or something else,
Yeah.
It's probably still there.
And that's problematic for our environment. So
The question is it still being actively maintained?
Absolutely, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw some discussion where they said, "Oh, Screen's been abandoned." I'm like, well, it had updates last week, so I don't know how you quite. Are we saying like now it's been abandoned right now? No, it's not that bad.
You got to be careful of that. Like that OpenSSL, the Heartbleed bug. There were 4 people worldwide maintaining OpenSSL. So even though it was on everybody's distribution, no one was really paying attention.
No, those Screen still gets a little, but again, it's a very mature product. Until there is a bug or a security issue with it, people aren't really tweaking on it normally because it does what it does, and it seems to be a mature software package. That answer your question? Yeah. I may have to retool this for TMUX or find a new thing to get up here and dance and sing about. So split screens. This is a really neat feature. So what we can do is we can do horizontal split screens, which is the original. And of course, on today's increasingly wider and less tall screens, the newer versions of Screen, and when I say newer, I mean newer than the one that shipped in Red Hat 6, which is not really setting the bar that high. Newer ones also have a horizontal split screen, which you use the pipe. You do Control A and then the pipe. Keep going in the wrong direction. So if I do Control A and then capital S, now we have a vertical split. You can see Midnight Commander is unfortunately squished all the way to the top of the screen. And we have a new screen down there. So if we do Control A tab, as if you were doing an Alt tab to go to the next window in your window manager, we are now down there. But nothing's been assigned to this yet. So if I do, as we talked about before, Control A 0, we're going to get our existing screen session with the remnants of top sitting there. So now we have 2 independent things, so we can put top down here, and that'll keep running and updating. We do Control A tab, go back up to Midnight Commander, and very difficultly, because we have exactly 3 lines of directory available to us. So we have 2 active screens that we can look at the same time.
When you split the screens like that, whether vertically or horizontally, is that under the same screen session, so
Absolutely.
to speak? So that the scenario we talked about just recently is you disconnect your screen session, you log off SSH, you go back and to a different location, you log back in as SSH, reconnect to that screen, and then reattach to it, and then now when you reattach to it, you're still going to get your 2 splits.
So I detached.
Yeah. Your 2
reattach. Oh, the split didn't stay. Look at that.
Oh,
I
that
would
was
have thought it did.
No, it's a worthy discussion question. It's just interesting to if that happened, then that Okay, now you got a horizontal.
Now
or
we've got a horizontal
vertical,
split.
Yeah. Or I guess in this case it would be a vertical, well, depending on how you worded it, yeah.
Yes, it's a vertical split, yes.
Yeah.
I said that wrong, sorry. So, okay, so I stand corrected. The split does not stay.
So the one that it kept was the primary one.
Yes. But mind you, all those other sessions are still there.
It's still,
It just didn't keep the screen arrangement, the physical screen arrangement.
try tabbing through from there, see if the Control A tab you did, see if it can cycle through it.
Well, Control A tab goes between the two.
Okay.
So if I do Control A N and go to the next session. Oh, give me just a second here. Control A N.
You get questions, you get these stretched use cases that,
Yeah.
okay, now you just established a second part of Midnight Commander, or is that the same one showing
No, this
twice?
is the same.
Now there, you're cycling through it now. What did you do to make it do that?
Control A N isn't doing what I expected to. Oh,
So those sessions were
there
still
we go.
there. They are still there.
no,
'Cause you
all
just-
those sessions are still there. We just lost our arrangement. Oh, and
Okay.
when we saw Midnight Commander, these are the same one. We have two views of the same Midnight Commander.
So when you split, it's split in what are called views.
Essentially, yes.
So now you have the other view. How did you get to the top view? The view with the top.
I did
right?
Control A N. Control A N wasn't working because at some point I accidentally hit caps lock. So it was doing Control A capital N, which I don't
Okay,
even know
so
what that
so
does.
that's not a GNU Screen issue. That's just a fat finger issue.
That was a fat finger issue, yes.
But I mean, it's important to note that so the feature you were talking about really is there.
Yes, it absolutely, the Control A N still got us to the next thing.
So then we did establish that when you do drop the detach from the session, you reattach from a new SSH login. You still have your two views there.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
All of your screens within, all of your sessions within screen are still there. Apparently, though, you lose your split screen session. It didn't bring that back. I'm stunned. No one has ever asked me that before. So if I detach from it, which
Right.
is what I just did, and
Okay.
reattach,
Right.
I don't have my split screen. Now, but all of those sessions are still there. So if I do Control A N, Midnight Commander's still there. Our top session is still there. They're
The
all
sessions are still there. It's just the split views are lost.
right. Our split
Okay.
view was lost in the process. And my only big mistake with that was I fat fingered, hit caps lock, and that's why Control A N wasn't working, wasn't stepping through the session. So I was like, no, this is all supposed to be here. I was doing the wrong.
But that's
command.
important to note because many of us are spazzes at the keyboard. I mean, I am,
Right. So there's our thing. So let me get back to the slides before I go too far afield here. So Control A, capital S, Control A, pipe, and I believe it's Control A X to get rid of a split screen. Oh, switch between screens, Control A tab. I already talked about that. And then Control A, capital X eliminates your split screen. So if we go back.
eliminates the
Control
split
A.
screen, but it doesn't eliminate the
Right, all those sessions are still there. So if I do Control A N, Midnight Commander's still there, Top is still there, and our regular bash.
So for like VI and some of those other tools, they do have Remax. They have like a little pamphlet, like the cheat sheet with all the. Is
Yes.
there anything similar for screen or?
Other than the command bindings, I don't think so. The man page is pretty rich though, and there are plenty of references online for it. So, let's go back to the slides.
And to get to the command bindings, that's built into the utility itself, or
What that? Yeah, that's Control A question mark.
Control
It's sort
A
of like the
question.
built-in help for a subset of the things there. So other useful items. So these are useful if you're again working at a terminal, and all of a sudden you think it would have been really great if I could pipe all of my commands off to something else. If you do Control A capital H, it takes everything from that point forward and saves it to a log file for you. Saves it to a text file.
sort of like bash history.
But the output of all the commands as well. Bash history you could very easily just pipe off if you just want to see what
Which-
you type. But if
which
you want to see the
sounds-
results,
That's almost like directing to a file.
Yeah, it's basically-
teeing it off to a file.
it's basically like dynamically teeing it off to a file while it's already running. You don't have to do it before you
And
start the screen.
that might be similar to like what RHEL8's doing with remote session logging now, where you just log everything.
Yeah, that could well be how they're doing it. Who knows?
Well, that's an audit tool right there.
Yeah. You can also get a screenshot. So say you just ran a command, and if you run it again, you'd get different results. You want what's on the screen. You can do Control A, lowercase h. Let me do the top screen. Actually, let's do this. Let's do this. We'll do Control A, lowercase h, and if you watch the top, it says screen image written to hardcopy.1. So if we look now, we've got hardcopy.1. Let's do. That shows us what was on the screen at that second.
Just on the screen, like not the
Just
scroll
what was
back,
on the screen.
the
It's not
scroll back.
logging it. Control A, uppercase H, starts logging from when you hit that.
So you get the scroll back and all that
Yeah.
stuff. Okay, cool. And it's just a text file. It's just like ASCII or whatever.
It is absolutely just an ASCII text.
But that's what you're getting on the terminal screen anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Here's the reason.
which makes it greppable very readily.
Yeah. So here is the second reason that we use screen instead of tmux. When I was looking for this utility, I found out it was already on all of our production servers. And it's probably because of this next thing, because we had a requirement that you can lock your session dynamically if you're
That's a STIG
either in
anyway,
front of
right?
it. Yeah. If you're in front of it,
Yeah.
you need to be able to do that. This is probably why this was on there in the first place, to enable that capability. So if you're at a session, you do Control A X. You have to type your password before you can get back in. So that's helpful if you're, logged in as root, you're in the middle of something at an actual physical terminal, you need to walk away and come back, you don't want to log back out and lose all your stuff, you can just lock it. Where you sit, it stays locked. List of all active screens. I should really put this earlier in the presentation. So when we look at our thing, we have several different screens. Let me actually get to the next line. We can name the current screen so that the previous function is in any way useful. So if you watch, so we'll do Control A, double quote. Now, unfortunately, we haven't named any of these. So we've got 3 sessions that all just say Bob at Red Hat, because that's what the shell is. But if we do Control A, Control A, uppercase A, we can call this one top, and then go to the next one, and we can call this one Control A, uppercase A, and then we can go to the next one, and we can do Control A, uppercase A. Okay, so now if we do Control A, double quotes, we can see all of our sessions, and they're much more useful. And then you could just...
Now you assign these names, or it's just?
I just typed them in on the fly, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, it doesn't auto-assign names.
And it lets you put a space in there without having to put quotes around Midnight Command.
Yeah, it did. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, it didn't question that. Okay, so here's something I found out. Actually, I added this to the presentation afterwards. That's how late in the game I found it. There is a cut and paste function within Screen, because we used to have a problem was we'd have a system that wouldn't boot correctly because VMware decides to assign the names dynamically to its disks on the fly, which is really inconvenient. So you get on the machine in a limited shell. You want to edit fstab so that it has the UUID instead of the volume name, which changes with alarming regularity.
That should just be standard practice because that.
Yeah. So let's say let's do block ID. So we get our we get a UUID for that. What you can do is you can do Control A, left square bracket.
Well, explain the UUID block, the challenge again. Like, what was the?
So you're at a terminal. You want to edit fstab so that you use the UUID instead of the device name. Now, device name is easy. I could say, oh, it's VDB2.
The dev path.
Depending on what system you're on, but it might change. Or
Right. Yeah, that changes now with virtual machines.
Yeah.
So you want to use the UUID, which will always be the same for that device.
And it's
The
also
only
not
problem is-
guaranteed that when any Linux system comes up, dev SDA or B is going to
If
be
you have-
different
if you have
too.
stuff that, if you have stuff that changes, if your disk configuration
Yes,
changes.
yes.
those
Or
changes.
the naming of Ethernet
So-
devices, all
Yeah.
that.
That too,
That's
yeah.
driving people
Yeah.
nuts. Yeah.
As opposed to VDB2, that UUID is a little tougher to memorize from when you type vim fstab dot.
But if you put it in fstab and then all you need to remember is the mount point.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So with this, what we want to do is we want to take that UUID and put it in fstab. Now, if I wasn't at a machine with an easy cut and paste, how do you do this? This is a pain in the neck. Now, there's ways you can pipe stuff in and out, but here's an easy way. We did Control A, left square bracket. So now we're in edit mode. So I'm going to move up. Notice I can cursor around in my screen
What kind
section.
of editor is that? It's like Vim type of behavior.
It's a little similar. Hit space. Now we're marking the text, and if you look at the top, it says first mark set. Let's go to the end. Let's hit space again to end our mark. And if you look at the top, it says copied 46 characters into buffer. Now I can do vim, let's see, fstab. And I'm going to do a fakey one here because I don't want to wreck. Oh, here we go. I have an example. So let me make example live so it's easier to see. Now, let me make this a better. You know what? I'm just going to do that. Yes. Okay. So now we have our example. Let's delete what's there. And now I'm going to do Control A, right square bracket. Oh. Ha ha.
So left square
Vim-
bracket is copy, right square bracket is paste.
Right. Vim issues. Hold on. Let me try that again. And let me try to not make myself look stupid. By being in insert mode before I insert a whole bunch of characters so that a random character in the UUID isn't what starts insert mode.
Insert mode.
Okay, so now if I do Control A, right square bracket, it's good, we got all that on tape, right? It's excellent, you get my typos on there. So I did right square bracket and pasted in everything we picked up from that block ID line. So I could take that and make that extra, did an extra one, that was easy to do. And now we have a valid line in, well, what? A vaguely valid line in there.
The system's going to try to mount that when it boots up. And
No,
it's
that's
gonna
that's
be-
why I left it in read-only mode. It's not going to save it. But that UUID would be much harder to memorize, and now you can cut and paste it within one single session without having a cut and paste, nice graphical terminal. For example, the VMware terminal doesn't allow you to cut and paste from Windows, and that's the world I live in a lot of the time. Being able to do this within Screen was an absolute godsend. Because now, if you're in a state where the system doesn't boot because one of the devices doesn't mount, but you can get in and do a block ID and edit it, you can use Screen to cut and paste within that environment. That turned out to be a lifesaver in a number of instances. Any questions about that? I think that was not my smoothest explanation of that, but I think you got the drift, I hope.
No, it's very practical too.
Okay.
So
let me go through. Let me repeat with the slides, which maybe I should have done the slides first, would have been slicker. So you do Control A, left bracket is your cut mode. You cursor to the beginning of what you want to cut, hit space, cursor to the end of what you want to cut, hit space again, that cuts everything between them into the buffer. And then you do Control A, right bracket when you want to paste it. Is that better?
It's very intuitive. So can you like mouse over to where you want to be, or do you have to actually?
I don't think you can. Maybe if you run one of those mouse console things,
Okay.
maybe you can.
it's like run level 3. You can't mouse.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
well, there's a program, I forget what it's
So
called.
curses can do stuff. Or I thought you could mouse around a text screen, but it's
Depends upon what's now.
so
when
you're doing the arrows.
when you haven't fully booted because things won't mount, you're not going to be able to mouse
Yeah.
anything. Under certain circumstances, I don't know. I haven't really tried that, but it might-
Either that or what are those letters you use, L, J, or to move
Yeah.
the.
jump around.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can also do some customization at runtime on screen. You can edit what's called your Etsy Screen RC, I have a weird way it is. It's in one of two places, either
Well,
Etsy.
Sorry to interrupt, but what he said was interesting. If I'm in a VI session inside screen
Yeah.
and I do the Control A left bracket, can I space, hit Shift G to jump to the bottom of the file?
No, because it is jumping in front of you. You're working strictly on your screen and your scroll back buffer.
Okay. So you can't combine VI
You
commands
have
with
you
screen.
have frozen that. A lot of the VI, since it's a GNU thing. Oh, actually, Emacs keybinding is probably more likely. But you are working on a frozen section of the screen. Once you hit that control bracket, you're in
Screen takes control.
You're in screen land.
You're not talking to VI anymore.
Right.
Okay.
You're only looking at the static image of VI that's on the screen.
Gotcha.
Now, if things were to move underneath, I don't know. I think it freezes it actually. I don't think it will allow you to do that.
Gotcha.
So you've brought up interesting questions. So there are example configuration files either in Etsy Screen RC or Etsy/Etsy Screen RC. I don't know why the redundancy is there, but it's there.
What if the two differ?
It just depends upon where the distribution decided to put it.
But they have an Etsy under an Etsy?
Yeah, but it's not another slash.
Why?
It's not a slash. It's Etsy Screen RC with no space, as you can see
gotcha.
here.
Why?
I don't know.
Oh, look at that! There we go. So that one right there.
Etsy screen.
I can't explain it. So you could do things like this is where you would change your and so you put it under dot screen RC in your in your default location. You could do things like this is where you could change your key bindings if you're an Emacs user. You can map it to Control tilde or something.
This is where the Emacs people could change from Control
Could
A.
change
if they-
that.
yeah.
And you can do a lot of things. You can do things like, see, and this is going to look very similar to what we have now. I ended up where my example is. Start a bash, start a files session, start a screen session for performance with top. In my example, it also starts IRSSI, which since I'm not on the network won't be any fun at all. And then it puts a line on the bottom that gives you a lot of information on your screen. So, and that kind of looks like either an encrypted set of text or Perl program.
So that's some sort of a bunch of primitives or whatever.
Yeah, that I grabbed off the internet without the slightest bit of shame. Grabbed off the internet. Don't entirely
Don't know
understand
what
the
it does,
syntax.
but it looks cool.
No, I know what it does. I don't know how it does it.
Yeah.
Okay, I haven't delved deep enough to actually see what
So
each
it's
of these commands
Bitcoin
do.
mining for all you know.
But it's really useful. Seems like that'd be an edge case because there's not quite enough there to pull in a whole thing. But so what I did is I have another.
It looks like the stat output formatting commands.
Yeah. So I'm going to exit out of this actually. Let's do Control A / kills all of your windows simultaneously. That's actually not in the presentation. I don't think to put that in there. So I killed all of those. I'm going to exit out. And I'm going to start with a different profile which has that bash RC in there.
So once you exit from screen, you're still connected via SSH. So what you have on your screen now is just a standard SSH terminal.
Actually, I am completely out of the SSH
No,
session.
before you did the close.
Yes, before
Yeah.
I did
Right,
that, yes,
before
I
you
was
did
in the
right.
SSH. Okay. So now I've logged in as Murph, and if I do screen, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get screen with the screen RC that you saw in my configuration. I'm going to drop right in. So if you look here, we've got a line on the bottom here which shows us what's going on. We're in the IRC session of this. So if I do Control AP, it's going to move to performance, which will be top. And if I do Control AP again, I'm going to do files, which will be Midnight Commander. And if I do Control AP again, I'm stepping backwards through them. If you notice, the one that's highlighted here keeps moving
It's the one
back.
that's active.
Yeah.
And
So
it
if I
also
do-
asterisk next to it also.
Yes, there's also an asterisk next to it, and then just a shell. So this is giving us this, and we've got host name, and we've got time and date down in the corner. So it gives us a bunch of useful information.
So when you do the CSA exam or the SC Linux exam, do you take advantage of stuff like this, or do they prescribe not to? Like, what's the...
There's no reason you can't use any tool that's available in the standard repos. And since Screen, if you're doing Red Hat 7, Screen is in the
Yeah, I
standard
don't
repos.
want to like violate any of the NDA stuff. You
Yeah,
know.
I don't think I'm going outside the NDA on this. They make this all pretty clear right up front, is you're getting a stock Red Hat system. Done.
Use whatever you think you need.
If
in
you want
order
to
be
install
efficient.
X and use graphical tools, go ahead and do that. When you reboot, it better come up. And again, this is nothing that will break it. This is It better be running SE Linux, and everything better work the way you expect after you reboot. Period. So this gives us a little richer environment if you need to see. I do none of this at work. I just use the straight, screen RC the way it comes up, and I just use the tools in a more basic fashion. But you can certainly set this up to pop up the way you want.
Is there a reason why you don't take advantage of all this? Or?
Well, I take advantage of a lot of stuff in Screen. I don't set up a Screen RC with a lot of extra gobbledygook in it because I want to be able to sit down at any machine and know exactly. It's the same reason I don't use a lot of Vim plugins. Because you could change this to no. I want to sit down at Vim and know exactly what I'm getting.
And you might have said this, but the Etsy Screen RC, can that also be locally configured for each user? Like, is there an override?
Like a dot folder?
Yeah, no, those are just examples. Yes, you put them in your own Screen RC.
Gotcha.
Or you put it in, your bash.
And it's like a dot Screen RC, like it's a hidden
Yes,
file?
it's dot Screen RC.
Is it under config or is it just right there on the home?
I think it's right there in your home directory.
Okay.
So if you had something
actually-
if you had it in your home directory, it would look to that first before it would load.
Yeah, that would be the
That's-
override. That'd be the override.
Screen RC right in the home directory.
Right there.
I'm puzzling over this while I'm sitting in a machine that has
Could you-
exactly this configured.
Murph, would you jump into that dot screen RC folder and file and let's see what's in it? It's a file, yeah. Just for curiosity's sake.
Sure. You know what's in it? Exactly what I had on my previous slide.
And that's why it showed you at the bottom of the screen. What?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. That's the. Oh, let's do. That'll work out better. I found out coincidentally that a nice
So
high
does it-
contrast color set happens to be my name in Vim. Again, why screw with the defaults?
Did you copy from the Etsy Screen RC, or did that do that for you? If you
I edited that in from Rando site on the internet. So yes, if you get that verbatim, maybe you get a Bitcoin miner. I don't know. That seems unlikely though.
No, I'm just questioning, like, so when you installed Screen, it didn't give you a default.
Right. I
Screen
didn't look
RC.
at the defaults. Hey, let's look at the default.
It's Etsy Screen RC.
I said it could be either.
Oh.
Oh, look at all this stuff. There's all kinds of things in here you can do. Change your terminal types.
Like SSHD config.
Term-
It's like,
Yeah. Key bindings.
Yeah.
Okay, there's lots of stuff in here. Remember I said I'm just going to scratch the surface?
So does your
I try to
local
keep true to my
Screen
word.
RC replace that completely, or does it use
Yeah,
that
this is
plus
just
yours?
this is just an example. I think
Okay.
Or does the local screen RC just override only
Yeah,
the
that's
things
what I was
that's in
asking,
there?
yeah.
That's, yeah.
Yeah, does it
Uh,
use
if it's
Etsy
not in
and then
if it's not in
override
if it's not in the user screen dot screen RC,
Because some things
it
work
would
that way.
that
it would
is
come
an
out here.
excellent question for which I do not have the answer.
I mean, this is fascinating.
Yeah. Yes. Again, this is a brief introduction to GNU Screen.
I don't want to
So-
lose sight of the CentOS lab part too.
No, we got.
Yeah. Okay.
yeah. That
We-
takes about an hour no matter
We
what.
have no hard stop, so don't worry
Okay.
about it.
Yeah, we started a little late, so I think we're still 20
Yeah,
minutes
and
scheduled.
you know what I realized
Oh.
too, Mark? I got swag in my trunk. I'm giving you guys swag too. I got cool swag.
Okay.
I got military hats.
Outstanding. So I'm down to credits. I'm down at the end of this anyway. So where did I get my information from? The Screen Man pages were resource number one. Linode has a very nice nice tutorial on how to manage screen sessions, of course useful with virtual machines. And there was a site called Aperiodic, which had a nice summary of key bindings beyond what's on the little help file. So you were asking for a cheat sheet? That would be a good place to find it. And all of this stuff is on my GitHub page. So if you go to github.com/murphnj, I actually have no real code in there. All I have is presentations. That's all I have up there. And that's pretty much all I have. If you need to contact me, oh, did I just put my email over the internet? No,
You just
whatever.
did.
Okay. So if you have questions, you let me know. I'd prefer to keep my email local, but
You
I
put
guess
your
I guess I
email
blew
on
that.
the internet inside a video, so I don't think a scanner's going to see it.
Yeah, that's why I didn't say it out loud. I'll have to watch that on my last slide of this. So. Any other questions? Oh, yeah, I didn't mean to be on this page. I meant to be on this page. So, any other questions? Got any questions for do you, as a budding system administrator, Linux tinkerer? Does Screen seem like it might be useful to you?
Yeah, funny enough, I didn't really know that
that what we're going to talk about is something I've used before. I messed around this to run a Minecraft server had to keep a terminal open while being able, but if I didn't use Screen and I closed the terminal, it would kill the session. of the
Okay,
server.
so
There
you've
you
used
go.
it
He
for
has a
very
use
much
case right there.
the exact use case that I started using it for was exactly why you were using it.
Do we have to pull down the CentOS ISO or?
If you want to follow along, you need to have all the virtualization software installed on your machine and have a CentOS ISO ready, or a Red Hat ISO. It would work the same. I just use CentOS because it's free. So, get a minute or two break between the two presentations.
Sure. And I'll go grab some swag for
We
you
can
guys.
do that. Okay, we'll make this,
Minute?
so I've
that
stopped the
okay?
streaming.
Okay.
And
I'm
we're
going to.
we're 7.7 or 7.6 or something.